Hello everyone and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Remy's voice cracked like a whip over the sun-soaked patio of the Forrester estate, cutting through the leisurely murmur of cicadas and the clink of iced tea glasses. Dad, he's my son. The statement hung in the air, thicker than the Santa Ana winds that shook the palm fronds above. Eric Forrester's hand froze as he reached for his glass, moisture slipping between his fingers and falling down the wrought iron table. Felicia Forrester, bronzed and windswept from whichever corner of the world she had fled to at the time, stood at the threshold of the French doors, one palm braced against the frame as if the news itself might push her back. Her gaze, those legendary Forrester blues, was fixed on the small kid clinging to her thigh. His dark locks ruffled and his tiny hand knotted in the fabric of her linen sundress. Eric's gaze shifted from Felicia to the infant and back again, the patriarch's expression shifting through a dozen emotions in a heartbeat. Uncertainty, recognition, horror and awe. The youngster couldn't have been more than 4, maybe 5, and had a dimple on his left cheek that matched Eric's when he smiled in old photos. But it was the eyes that stopped Eric cold, hazel flecked with gold. The precise shade Felicia had received from her mother Stephanie, the hue that had once convinced Kristen that their newborn sister could enchant the devil himself. "Felicia," Eric said, his voice gravelly, the word combining query and appeal. He slowly rose, his chair scratching against the terracotta tiles. Ridge, sitting on the chaise with a sketchpad poised on his knee, looked up suddenly, the charcoal in his fingers splitting in half. Brooke, ever the mediator, laid her tablet down and stood, her silk blouse whispering as she approached the youngster with the instinct of a woman who had raised more than her fair share of Forrester children. Felicia's chin rose defiantly, as it always did when she was about to detonate a family gathering. "I did not come here to seek permission, Dad. I came to tell you the truth before someone else turned it into a scandal." She knelt, stroking the boy's curls back from his forehead. "This is Mateo. Mateo Eric Forrester. My son. Your grandson." The name hit like a grenade. Eric's knees buckled, and he grabbed the edge of the table to support himself. Ridge was on his feet now, sketchpad forgotten, and his dark eyes narrowed as he observed the youngster. "Felicia, what the hell?" he began, but Brooke's hand on his arm stopped him. She understood, maybe more than anyone else, the importance of secrets in this family. Mateo, oblivious to the tempest developing above him, yanked on Felicia's dress. "Mama, can I have juice?" His voice was smooth with a subtle European accent, perhaps Italian or French. Felicia's smile wavered as she nodded and took him into her arms. The motion exposed a slight scar along her collarbone, new since Eric last saw her. A thin white line that spoke of operations, anguish and decisions made in hospital corridors far from Los Angeles. Eric discovered his voice. How long? That was all he could manage. How long did she keep this from them? How long had she been carrying it alone? Felicia met his eyes unflinchingly. 5 years, Dad. Since the night I left for Capri. Since the night I told you I needed space, that the fashion house was strangling me, and that I couldn't breathe in the shadow of Forrester Creations. She joked, her voice scratchy. I was not lying. I just took out the bit where I was 8 weeks pregnant and afraid. Ridge clenched his lip. Who is the father, Felicia? Do some Italians count? A yacht captain? Don't tell me it's not Thorne, Felicia interrupted, understanding his mind as only siblings could. It's not someone you know. His name was Luca. He was a photographer. We met in Positano. It was intense. Reckless. Her voice cracked on the final word, and Mateo buried his face in her neck, sensing the change in her attitude. Eric took one step forward, then another, until he was near enough to see the faint freckles on Mateo's nose and the way his eyelids fluttered when he blinked. The boy peered out, intrigued, and Eric's heart did a slow, excruciating somersault. "May I?" he inquired, extending his arms. Felicia hesitated and finally nodded. The transfer was careful and reverent, as if they were passing a Ming vase. Mateo went cheerfully, his small hands caressing Eric's cheeks with the unself-conscious tenderness of a child who had never learned to be afraid. "Nonno?" he experimented, the Italian word for grandfather tumbling out readily. Eric's eyes widened. Behind them, the patio door slid open once more, and Steffi strode out, phone in hand mid-sentence. "Grandpa, I need your signature on the O." She paused, taking in the scene. Her aunt, the unknown youngster, and her grandfather's tears. "Felicia? When did you? And who is?" "Everyone," Felicia announced, her voice steady now. "Come meet your nephew. My son. The reason I stayed away." The afternoon turned into a frenzy of questions, half-answers, and Forrester's unique blend of drama and devotion. Brooke went inside to get juice and cookies, returning with a tray containing a sippy cup she'd evidently stored just in case during Hope's visits with the grandparents. Rich paced, muttering about DNA testing and press leaks. Steffi sent text to the family group chat, but quickly regretted it when Thomas responded with a barrage of exclamation marks and a request to FaceTime. But Eric didn't hear any of it. He was engrossed in Mateo's laughing as the youngster discovered the koi pond and pointed to the fish with excitement. "Pesci," he yelled, and Eric replied, "Fish," his voice heavy. Felicia watched from the chaise, her shoulders slumping with relief that she had not allowed herself to feel until now. It was almost dusk when the rest of the family arrived. Thorne arrived first, his expression a mask of horror that softened as Mateo approached and offered him a dandelion. "Uncle Thorne," Felicia replied simply, and Thorne's eyes widened. He hadn't been addressed like that in years. Kristen swooped in from New York, her red hair ablaze against the twilight, scooping Mateo up and spinning him until he squealed. Rick and Maya also emerged, lured by Steffi's urgent texts, their daughter Lizzie trailing after with startled eyes. Dinner was chaotic, catered of course because no Forrester crisis would be complete without lobster bisque and truffle risotto. Mateo sat on a booster seat between Eric and Felicia, his manners flawless, and his conversation a blend of Italian and English that enchanted even the most dubious. Hope arrived late, straight from a meeting with Deacon, and paused in the doorway upon seeing the boy. "Felicia," she said. "He's beautiful." The inquiries came in waves. Why did she stay away? Why not inform them? Was Luca in the picture? Felicia provided as many answers as she could. Luca died in a motorcycle accident when 6 months pregnant. She had been alone in a distant place, weeping and scared of the Forrester machine, which would devour her child whole. "I needed to protect him," she continued, her voice strong. "From the cameras, gossip, and expectations. I established a life in Tuscany, a little one, a peaceful one. But he began inquiring about his family, regarding his nonno, who designed lovely clothes. I couldn't lie any longer." Eric reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "You're home now," he stated. It wasn't forgiveness, it was acceptance, the kind only a parent could offer. Later, when the house quieted and Mateo slept in the guest room under the illumination of a star-shaped nightlight, Felicia discovered Eric in his study. He was at his workstation, sketching a child's face with sensitive and sure lines, rather than garments. "I used to draw you like this," he explained without looking up. "When you were smaller." Felicia leaned against the doorframe. "You had the same cowlick. I was afraid you'd be angry." "I am," Eric acknowledged. "But not towards you. At the years we have lost. At the fear that kept you away." He put down the pencil. "Felicia, he's a Forrester. Thorough and thorough. And Forresters do not abandon their family. We fight for it." She crossed the room and sank into the chair across from him. "I didn't know how to get back. Every time I thought about it, I pictured the headlines. Felicia Forrester's secret love child. I couldn't do that to him." Eric watched her, truly looked, and saw the tiredness etched into the creases around her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was watching. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "And neither is he." The paparazzi arrived the next morning as expected. A drone buzzed overhead as Felicia pushed Mateo on the swing set Eric had built decades ago for the grandchildren. Steffi, the PR expert, was already on the phone with crisis management. But when the first photo appeared in the tabloids, Felicia giggling, Mateo mid-squeal, Eric beaming in the background, the headline was hardly scandalous. It was joyful. The Forrester family welcomes a new heir. Inside, Brooke poured coffee as Rich complained about security changes. Hope cooed at Mateo's clothing. A little Forrester original onesie Felicia had sneaked into her luggage. Thorne taught the youngster how to pronounce uncle in 3 languages. Kristen video called from the airport and promised to return with Tuscan children's books. Felicia watched from the kitchen island, her hands warmed by a mug. The terror that had kept her away for 5 years seemed remote now, like a passing storm. Mateo's laughter rang through the halls, joining the spirits of Forrester children who had passed there. Ridge and Thorne wrestling, Steffi and Phoebe conspiring, Rick and Bridget conniving. Eric joined her, sliding his arm around her shoulders. "You know," he explained, "we have a legacy to uphold. But more than that, we have a family to raise. Starting with breakfast." Felicia leaned against him, her burden of secrets lifted. "Pancakes?" she inquired, recalling a childhood routine. "Blueberry," Eric said. "And whipped cream smiles." As the family gathered around the table, Mateo in the center like a small sun, Felicia felt the final piece of her fragmented universe fall into place. She had returned home not as the prodigal daughter, but as a mother. That was enough in the Forrester mansion, where love and mayhem coexisted. The days blended into weeks. Mateo began to roam the huge estate with the confidence of a youngster born there, charming the servants, befriending the gardeners, and claiming the koi pond as his ocean. Felicia returned to the pace of Forrester creations, her eye for design sharper than ever, honed by years of studying European couture in small ateliers. Ridge complained about her rustic ideas, but covertly integrated her Tuscan color scheme into the autumn collection. Eric, on the other hand, reverted to the grandfather role he had always desired. He taught Mateo how to wield a pencil, sketch the contour of a sleeve, and appreciate the fall of fabric. He read from the same storybooks he'd previously read to Felicia at night, his voice cracking as Mateo fell asleep mid-sentence, thumb in mouth. There were challenges, of course. The tabloids dug up dirt on Luca, publishing grainy images of a handsome man with a wild grin. Felicia declined interviews, but Steffi arranged a tasteful spread in Vogue, Mother and Son in the Forrester Gardens, with the headline simply, "A New Generation Blooms." One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in Forrester reds, Felicia discovered Eric in the atelier, surrounded by bolts of silk. Mateo dozed on a chaise, clutching a scrap of emerald velvet in his fist. "Dad," she murmured softly, "I need to tell you something else." Eric looked up warily. "Is there more?" She nodded and pulled a tiny package from her pocket. Inside was a plain gold ring with a small crest carved on it. "Luca's. He handed it to me the night before he died. She said it was his mother's and belonged to the family." She slid it onto her finger and then removed it. "I've never worn it. Did not feel right. But Mateo should have it eventually." Eric took the ring and turned it in the light. "He will," he said. "When he is old enough to grasp what family entails. What it cost." Felicia smiled for the first time since her homecoming. "I think he already does." Outside, the cicadas began their nightly chorus, and a child's laughing mingled with the wind in the distance. The Forrester legacy, divided, damaged, and fiercely loved, entered a new chapter, one written not in controversy, but in the peaceful confidence of a young boy's hand snuggled firmly into his grandfather's. Felicia Forrester returned home to the heart of Los Angeles, where dreams were sown and truths were revealed. "Dad, he's my son." The words rang through the magnificent foyer of the ancient Forrester Manor, bouncing off marble and glass and lingering like a tolling bell. Remy Forrester stood in front of Eric Forrester, his voice shaky but determined. Felicia Forrester returned abruptly to Los Angeles, bringing with her a whirlwind of secrets. Eric's eyes expanded. He had constructed his life around certain truths: his business, his legacy, and his children. He believed he knew his daughter Felicia's life destiny, and the old secrets were finally revealed. But now Felicia stood in his home, carrying news so seismic that it threatened to bring everything down. Felicia's homecoming had been abrupt. She was halfway across the world, working in Paris, far removed from the family drama, when she appeared at the Forrester mansion's front door, luggage in hand, pale and resolute. She invited Eric to meet her immediately in the study. As he stepped in, he saw his daughter sat with a trembling in her hands, and Remy stood by her, young, earnest, with Felicia's eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad," Felicia murmured, her voice breaking, "but I have to tell you the truth." Eric shifted uncomfortably, his thoughts racing. "What truth?" What a surprise. He saw a small quiver in Felicia's typically confident posture. Remy cleared his throat. Mr. Forrester, Dad, I understand how unexpected this is, but I can't lie any longer. He stared at Eric. I'm your grandchild. Felicia is my mother. The air froze. Eric sat astonished, his mind rejecting the words. Then he stood slowly, grasping for his cane and leaning against it. The shock on his face was unmistakable. My grandson, he echoed. Yes, Felicia replied softly. Because years ago, before I departed for Europe, I made a decision. I left someone behind. And that person, well, he died. And I carried on. I assumed I didn't have a child. But I did. I gave birth secretly. I could not bring him here. It was too intricate and controversial for the family. So I left, sent him away, and assumed I had buried the past. Her voice trembled. But now he's returned. Remy nodded. I've found her. I found her through letters and whispers. I discovered the truth. And I felt compelled to come here to you because I belonged. Because you should know. Eric closed his eyes, the weight of decades bearing down on him. He recalled Felicia's youth, her lavish existence, the times when he missed her and worried. He considered the legacy of the Forrester name. He reflected on identity, who we are, where we came from, and what we hide. Everything has now shifted. How long did you know? His voice quivered. Not long, Remy replied. Just recently. Felicia leaned across the coffee table and grabbed Remy's hand. Dad, I wanted to tell you sooner. I was afraid of how you'd respond, of hurting the family, and of the mayhem that would ensue. Eric breathed. He looked at Remy. Why now? Because, Remy said, I am weary of living a lie. I'm weary of feeling as if I don't belong. And when I learned about the Forrester legacy, I recognized how important belonging is. My mom is a Forrester. My granddad is the patriarch. I deserve to know. You deserve to know. There was silence. The grandfather stared at his daughter, then at his grandson, and last at the family photos on the wall, all generations of Forresters nicely placed. A lifetime of poised photos. Now a fresh face had appeared. Eric nodded slowly. Come sit. He motioned to 2 chairs. Eric shifted to his own chair, while Felicia and Remy shared the other. It felt like the beginning of a new era. Felicia gulped. I'll explain everything, how it happened, how I left, why I came back. She started to talk. Approximately 15 years ago, she had a secret affair outside the glamorous world of Forrester creations. She had left Los Angeles for Europe out of desperation and humiliation. She realized that she was pregnant. However, with the family limelight and expectations looming, she felt unwilling to claim that child. So she arranged for adoption, entrusting the baby to a close friend overseas. The friend reared the child under a different name. Felicia believed the child was safe, so she moved on, returning to LA at regular intervals but always remaining detached. She buried the secret. Remy's role. He grew up feeling out of place, constantly searching for identity and feeling as if something was missing. His adoptive mother left him a sealed envelope with the promise that the truth will eventually be revealed. He opened it when he was 18 and discovered Felicia's name, a photo, and a record. He traveled, followed leads, and eventually encountered Felicia. She could not refute it. Then they all came here to Eric because the family needed to know. Eric stared at them. You found me. He paused. You found your grandfather. His voice was full of astonishment and grief. Why haven't you called sooner? Why did you carry everything by yourself? Remy responded. I felt afraid. Of rejection. Of wrecking everything. Growing up, I didn't see myself as part of any legacy. Now I do. Eric's eyes welled with tears. He pondered of his late wife, the children who did belong, and the passage of time. Family, he answered. Family is more than birth. But birth is equally important. He turned to Felicia. You should have trusted me. Then to Remy. You're my grandson. Welcome. Tears flowed. Felicia leaned forward and kissed Remy's head. Remy gazed at Eric. Thank you, Grandpa. The next few days were difficult. Family gatherings, gossip among siblings, and commercial implications. When rumors circulated about Felicia's surprise return, and the mystery young man she introduced as her son. Some Forresters were furious. Some felt Felicia had harmed the family's image. Others were curious. The media sniffed a story. Business associates raised their eyebrows. But Eric remained firm. He held a news conference at Forrester Creations to announce, "We welcome into the family Mr. Remy Forrester, my grandson, the son of my daughter Felicia." Reporters posed queries. Remy stood by Felicia, Felicia by Eric, and Eric held the line. In secret, the family assembled. Felicia and her brother Ridge Forrester had an unpleasant encounter. Ridge inquired into what had been kept secret and the expense of maintaining the family name. Felicia admits, "I did it to protect you all. I reasoned that if I continued, no one would judge. But I wasn't protecting the family. I was running away from the reality." Ridge's tone softened. "You should have told me. We could have helped." She nodded, tears in her eyes. Remy met his new cousins Steffi and Thomas, the younger generation of Forresters. Some embraced him, while others stared suspiciously. To them, he was the unknown variable added to the long-standing dynasty. But he conducted himself with grace, ready to earn his place rather than be given it. Eric brought Remy inside his study, where the large Forrester tree of family portraits hung. He grabbed Remy by the arm. "You belong," he remarked. "Your story begins now." Remy nodded, awestruck. Felicia discovered that she was also healing. She had felt guilty for years, as if she had abandoned her child and the family. But seeing Remy discovered, acknowledged, and welcomed transformed her. She realized the secret weighed more heavily on her than on anyone else. In chatting with her father Eric, she discovered fresh compassion and forgiveness.